Greetings and welcome to the River Radio Sports Central podcast. Alongside Matt Varney from 103.5 ESPN, I am Darren Kennard, and we are in the middle of the madness as the calendar has turned to March, and we are getting down to the nitty-gritty of the boys basketball season. The girls, for our area teams, that part's over. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But for the boys, we're recording here on Thursday this week. We're down to the sectional finals, and dates to the Elite Eight are on the line Friday night.
Yeah, well, and you mentioned about the madness. I mean, nothing says that more than IHSA taking clips from the games the past 2 days and saying where the original madness started.
Right.
That you're completely right, guys. But it's just been crazy to see a lot of these games for the boys sectional semifinals have gone down to the wire and have had really crazy endings across not just our area, but across the state. Just sectional semifinals, there's something about it for those games. Especially up at Nashville the past two nights, gone down to the wire both times, and
been incredible games.
Couldn't ask for anything more, quite honestly.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we'll just go ahead and start there. And you had Nashville and Benton in the first semifinal on Tuesday night. You've got Benton, a team that was the 2 seed in the one subsectional, which means you're getting the one out of the other side, which was Nashville. Nashville had beaten Benton twice in the conference by 20 and then by 33 on that very same floor 3 weeks to the day of that sectional matchup. And so you knew Benton had to do something different. Yeah. And so they came out and, they were deliberate offensively. It was not a situation where they were holding the ball, because holding just means that, you're standing there holding the ball and the other team's not doing anything. Nashville was playing sticky man-to-man defense, and Benton was still able to just grind a lot of clock and be patient, and the game ends up going double overtime, and Benton pulls it out 41 to 39, and just one of those things that in those type of scores in a double overtime, you hear phrase like they're holding the ball. It's not necessarily an aesthetically pleasing, but at the end of the day, it was really effective.
Yeah. Well, and you won't see that going forward after this year with the shot clock. But I mean, we heard about it in regional finals with Mount Vernon Centralia. That literally happened. When that text came in, while I was doing Murphy-Ben regional final at Benton, that was about the time that Ben went to a 1-3-1 trap in the half court, and you started hearing Ben fans start to boo around the 2-minute mark because Murphy could not get in.
Right.
But it was not for lack of trying by any means. They were trying to run the offense, and Ben was playing a great 1-3-1 trap zone there. But you look at it, a lot of things come down to when you see something like a score that you saw Tuesday night from that game, of pace of play, being deliberate, as you said, and then defense, of course, as well. The offense, since there's no shot clock, is going to run it as many times as they need to until they get the shot that they like. And you're down to the point in these playoffs, this tournament, if you will, that you have teams that know we're not taking that 50% shot. We're going to find the 70 to 80% shot that this offense is designed to take, and they're not going to make simple mistakes of turning the ball over a million times. So they're going to continually push it back out. Okay, reset, or let's try a new one. It's going to happen. And so, you'll see a bunch of games that are sitting there in the 30s, but that's okay because you have some really good basketball going on. Again, not to talk about Murphy so much as it's what I see all the time, but 36-35 on Friday night in the regional final for Ben, and it was one of the best basketball games I've seen in years because it was such a deliberate thing, and it as I've told people for that, came down to free throws, and both teams just looked fantastic, and that's what we've seen here in the early going in the sectionals.
Well, and I've said all along that if the better team allows the lesser team to hold the ball, that's on them.
Absolutely.
So that's what made it was super impressive. What Benton was able to do is Nashville wasn't just letting you. It's not like Nashville settled back in a 2-3 zone and said, okay, You can hold
Right.
the ball. We're fine. You take we'll shorten the game. No, they were playing defense. And now, looking back, will they think, hey, could we, should we? I mean, those are questions that always come up. But the fact is, Benton had to execute. And they did. And they did against pressure. And, again, when you're talking about a situation where two teams are on the surface look to be at different levels, you don't expect the team that's the lower level team to be able to execute at a high level against a team that is apparently superior.
Yeah.
And again, the whole thing is you knew the longer Benton was in the game, the more the pressure shifts to Nashville as the favorite on their home floor. And that ended up being the case. And to talk about this, and I saw some people going, "Oh, that was awful to watch." And all that. I mean, I disagree. Now, I prefer more scoring and things of that nature, but it was incredibly high drama. Just the fact that Benton got the ball with 3 minutes and 2 seconds left at the end of regulation, and they ended up attempting to get the final shot. They turned it over with 4 seconds left or 3 seconds left. And so again, that's high drama that you're able to run the offense and not turn it over, or to not, and defensively you have to be so sound to not give up.
Absolutely.
You fall asleep for a second, somebody back cuts you for a layup. And so to me, it was a great exhibit of both teams executing at a high level.
Yeah. Well, and again, I'm not trying to continually talk about Murfreesboro, but that's what I saw last Friday as well, seeing the Rangers. Murphy had 3 opportunities in the final 17 seconds, and I've tried to run through it a million times in my head. I can't remember what happened on that first opportunity. What I know is the ball ended up out of bounds.
Right.
Had 3.8 on the clock, and they get it into Cash Brooks. Cash Brooks has a nice 15-foot leaner there to try to get the game winner, and Nolan Schaefer comes in and just blocks it out of bounds. Okay, now there's 2 seconds left. And what they do is a great job on the inbound of Miles Guthman, one of their top scorers for Murphy, is inbounding the ball. Okay, so there's one of the options off the floor for Murfreesboro. And so they say, so we're going to clog things up for Kemion Hale and Cash Brooks. You go ahead and give it to either Dejon Beard or Michael Bradfield, and we'll see what happens. We'll let the chips lie where they may. And Ben played great defense there in the closing moments, and that right there had me saying, man, if there was a team to lose to, that's the one I'd want to lose to right there. And so that is man, Ben is looking really good right now. And then for Nashville on the other side, I mean, they just have had a rough postseason. Even though they make it to the sectionals, I mean, I think that they'd be the first ones to tell you regionals did not go the way that they scripted by any means, but they made it through. Right. But to see each time that you stepped on the floor, oh man, we're seeing another opponent that we've already seen. This is the third time we're seeing this opponent. It felt almost like it was inevitable to happen. It was a path that obviously they felt confident with, but it was one of those, you're going to see another team that you've seen 3 times, right. Another one. It was bound to happen eventually that someone was going to get their comeuppance, it felt like.
Well, and back on the shot clock, because obviously the shot clock comes in next year, so that this is not going to be an option. And so I've never been, in this whole debate about the shot clock, I've never been somebody that's been, super pro or super anti. I felt like there need to be some other things brought in with the shot clock, like a reduction in games, more practice time, because I think there's this mistaken notion that with a shot clock, we're suddenly going to have a surge in scoring. And I think there might be a bump, but I don't think, and I'm not even convinced that we'll see a ton of that. But I found myself over the course of this postseason saying, because teams in the postseason in particular, when they get the ball and there's about a minute left in the quarter, they're holding for the final shot.
They are, yeah.
And I don't have statistics, but it feels like rarely are they successful.
Right.
And it drives me batty. And I kept thinking to myself, I can't wait till next year with the shot clock. Yeah. We don't have to worry about this nonsense. And we're going to have to see some strategy and things of that nature. So then we get to Tuesday night. And the way Benton does it, and it has nothing to do with who won or who lost.
Right.
It was to see the strategy put in place, executed to a high level to pull an upset.
Yeah.
And again, 3 weeks ago, that was a 73-40 Nashville win on that same floor.
Yeah.
So it goes back to, okay, about the shot clock. It kind of reminds me of baseball.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, we don't like the fact that teams are shifting, you know, and it's the batting averages are down and, you know, blah, 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 blah. So we're going to outlaw the shift. I don't like legislating strategy.
Right. Yeah.
It takes away the strategy instead of I'm going to put this in play. And if you're going to beat us, you're going to figure out a way to defeat that strategy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We're just going to change the rules. And that's what it feels like with the shot clock. But again, it's been rare that we've seen somebody be able to execute like Benton did in that circumstance.
Well, and the point, to your point, the one thing that I've really had against the shot clock is that, you know, high school basketball is still a developmental league when you get down to, or level, not league, I should say level, where it should be about learning, maybe not the basics, but learning, you know, what it takes to get to that next level. The next level is where you know you're going to have a shot clock, just putting it in there. I mean, it has its pros, and coaches and teams will adapt to it and come with strategy with it. But, I mean, when you get down to it, what you're talking about with the way that Ben does it versus holding the ball for the final minute and then nothing comes up with it. And there's no offense to any of the coaches out there, but that comes down to coaching. And when you really, it comes down to talent too, but it comes down to coaching. What are you going to do with that final minute to really set yourself up? Right. And if you're sitting there just draining the clock for 40 seconds and then, okay, now we're going to go in at the 15-second mark, you could have been really getting the defense out of position in those 40 seconds.
Right. And then the flip side is defensively, if you sit back and just allow it to happen, then, you know, I mean, and that's what happened. You know, go to the second semifinal at Nashville, Bree Central and Carterville. Central comes out, you know, unbelievably on fire, jumps out to they led by 12 in the first quarter. It was 13 at one point in the second. Carterville chips away, comes back, takes the lead in the fourth. Central ties it up with 1:34 to go.
Yeah.
And Carterville held the ball for the final shot. Mm-hmm. And again, you know, this is strategery.
Yeah.
And there was no doubt that was what Carterville's intentions were.
Of course.
It wasn't even like Benton where there was ball movement and we're gonna probe, and if we get a lane to the bucket, we're gonna take it. Or I mean, it was pretty much Colton Hawkins was dribbling out top, and again, that was the decision to allow that to happen, because then the risk is, well, if we go in double, maybe we give up a layup or whatever. And again, that's the strategy part of it that you are legislating out of it.
Well, and I mean, you were there, so you can correct me if I was wrong. I haven't seen, obviously, the full film of it, but I mean, that would have fallen within a normal shot clock, I believe.
It was 1:34.
Okay, a minute 34.
94 seconds. That's right. They had it, and so
you did mention that.
That would be like three possessions.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're right.
In a shot clock era.
But
so.
I was going off of the final call that I heard from Dave McKenzie, where they had it come back on out with 20-some seconds left, and that, yes, that is a final possession. No matter what, you're going to hold it for at that point. But we're talking about 35 seconds. Right. That's not a big deal. Yeah,
because they got it with about 1:35, I think, and then they called timeout. Carterville did with 35 seconds left.
There you go.
And then so basically
a full shot clock.
You're right. It is a full shot clock, and they executed it perfectly. And,
they did.
And
I mean, it comes down to also Hawkins was so good all night long, playing to the level that we've come to expect from the Hawkins boys, and Breeze, like you said, they couldn't underestimate. They had to take care of business there, and that's what made the Lustenberger kid wide open for that three.
Well, and that's the thing, is that up at that point, Colton had scored 23 of their 43. He was really the only legitimate offensive option for most of the game.
Right.
And so, for him to give it up in that circumstance was incredible.
Huge.
And then for Max Lustenberger, who only had one other bucket early, and that was the first half, a little floater in the lane, a sophomore, to be sitting there in the corner, knowing that this guy has carried us all night, but also knowing that he will give it up.
Yes.
And Colton makes the move, the double team comes, quick pitch, and it's up and it's over.
I would have loved to have been in that final timeout, listen to Shane Hawkins, because I don't know how much he said we're drawing it up where it's going to be Colton brings it up and he's going to make a decision, or if it was, you're getting the ball, be ready because you need to shoot. I don't know what it was. I'm sure Dave McKenzie down the hall knows, but it's one of those things that I would have loved to have been in that huddle and just heard what the strategy was behind it, because it could have literally been as close as, Colton, you're going to make the decision. You're the senior. I expect you to make the right decision here. Or it could have been, I'm drawing everything up. This is where everything's going to go. Maddox, you're getting the ball. I'm counting on you, buddy.
Well, and I think, again, you go back to the regional final Friday.
Yeah.
They're in the same spot, but it's not. It's two different people.
Yeah.
Maddox Gully gets into the lane, makes a tremendous pass to Harper Lustenberger for the layup in the game winner against the Patriots. And so, Shane said last night in our interview, he's like, we know it's either going to be in Gully's hands or in Colton's hands, and those guys both know what we want. We practice those things, and so I think the setup was, we're going to go Colton on the left wing, and we're going to put a shooter in the corner, and that's if they come to double, we're going to be ready to shoot.
The thing that I've said about Carterville for several years, not this year necessarily, but for several years, I just sometimes been like, they're just so boring because they play it to the book, but that's what leads to instances like this. They play really good defense, and then it's gotten to the point now where it's not boring, because when you were playing by the book, you were bringing up guys like Colton Hawkins. You had the elder Hawkins, who's at SIU now, as a senior then, kind of just running it by the book. We don't need to do anything special. We just need to win the game. But it's gotten to the point now where your leaders, they were there when the book was already written, but it was being taught extensively. They are the book now. And so you put out Gully out there, you put out Hawkins there, and basically say, open up the book. You've got a pair of Lustenbergers out there that are heck of athletes. They'll be able to make it happen. I also trust you guys. And then you've got a bunch of guys behind you. And so, Shane, I know you're listening at some point here. I'm not saying necessarily that it's bad to be boring. I'm sure he would say the same. But at the same time, it's like, for so many years, I was like, I know what's going to happen. And I know it's going to go down to the final wire, and I know they're going to pull out the win. But it would also be just, they're just that good.
Well, and what's been interesting to me, seeing Carterville a couple of times here down the stretch, they had a little hiccup there around the midwinter tournament time, in which they lost to Benton, it's Benton and Carterville for the sectional title. But the thing that struck me is that these guys all understand the game. Like you said, the book, they get it, and they move and they pass and they cut and they work off of each other, and it's really an aesthetically pleasing. It may be boring in some ways, but at the same point, when you see dudes doing what they're supposed to do and executing at a high level, it's impressive to watch.
Going back to the beginning of the season, you and I were there for the loss to Waltonville at Carbondale. And there's a lot of things that went into that loss. We won't get into all of it, but it was early season, and I think a lot of the younger guys were still. What I've heard from Dave McKenzie is that Colton Hawkins is deceiving to the average basketball fan, and if he had 4 other Colton Hawkins out there, he'd probably win Mr. Basketball because he's just that smart of a player. And it took a minute for his teammates to catch up to that level. As you just said, they're all playing with high basketball intelligence right now. And just that really creates a really interesting matchup for Friday night of just a Benton team that will not quit. And they've got high basketball IQ as well. I'm not saying they don't. But their kind of calling card here the past couple of weeks is the tenacity, the won't give upness, versus a Carterville team that might be the smartest team, if not in the area, possibly the state. I mean, they are just such a smart team that you could open it. I have no doubt that Shane Hawkins could be like, I'm gonna freelance here for a minute, and we're just gonna drop a play here in the next 30 seconds. You're gonna go out there and run it, and they'd be able to run it to perfection.
And again, the strategery in front of us for Friday night is, how will Benton play it? Because, going into Nashville, they beat you by 30. They clubbed you by 33. So if you come in with the game plan of that, hey, we're gonna play slow, and everybody bought into it. Now you're playing a Carterville team that you beat So where does the strategy go?
Yeah.
I mean, do you play it straight up? Do you play it more? And again, it's fascinating. And how will Carterville?
Yeah.
How will they attack Benton? And you're coming off the loss at their place, and again, it was an overtime game, so it's not like either team dominated. It was a pretty even matchup. Yeah. And look, you get to a sectional final. I mean, you can't ask for much more. Winner goes to SIU, and you're in the. If you win, you're in the Elite Eight.
Well, and for people that are hoping for a barn burner of a game, it'll be a barn burner. I promise you that. But it won't look like it if you just see the final score. Don't be surprised if you see 33-30. It'll be a close game between. Both these teams don't mind running slow paces. It's not about when you get down to the analytics of it. For basketball, it's not about the end score. It's about how many points per possession did we get. And so if you're looking at both teams only having 30 possessions, they'll be happy if they both are averaging a point a possession. It'll be fine for that. It probably will be low scoring, but I guess the point that I'm trying to get to is both these teams are comfortable if it's going to be in the 30s, if it's in the 40s, if it's in the 50s. They won't mind whatever type of game they have to play. They're going to be comfortable with it, and they're going to match the other team. It's going to be a heck of a game on Friday night.
And at the end of the day, style points don't matter.
No,
it just matters that you score one more point than the other team, and you get to move on. And so, on the other side of the feed that feeds into SIU, that is the Pleasant Plains 2A sectional, and that final will be Quincy, Notre Dame, and Rochester. And that will be also a Friday night at 7:00. And so Quincy, the favorite, and let's just say there is no good way to get from Quincy to Carbondale.
There's not.
And they may have to leave shortly after Friday's sectional final. to get here. I kid, but anyway, so that would be at SIU would be Monday at 7:00. All right, let's go to 1A, and I would be remiss if we don't back up a little bit to the regional final because we had some you had the Woodlawn Sparta that we talked about it going into last podcast, and realistically that game was a great game, and it was that typical postseason game. Woodlawn had been dealing with some injuries. They had more injuries during the game. Sparta came out and took control of the game like midway through the second, and Woodlawn kind of kept chipping away, and next thing you know, it's a one possession game late, and Cooper gets a look in transition from three that would have tied it, and it rimmed out, and Sparta ends up winning. It's their first regional title since 1991. 35 years. And there was some serious celebrating going on that floor.
I would imagine. That's a town that obviously deserves it, but I don't know if I'd want to be sticking around till maybe about Monday, because I have a feeling the celebrations were going all weekend long. And that's one of those things, you get out of the way, you let the people that have deserved this get to earn it and get to celebrate it. Sparta getting to win it and celebrate it like that's awesome for them. And as I've said, I've seen this moment coming for them for several years. I knew when they came back from a 20-point deficit against Murphy a few years ago, that tumbled Murphy out of the championship game at their midwinter down to the seventh-place game. After I saw that, I was like, oh, Sparta's going to be a problem for years to come, aren't they? And they have proved to be a problem. And this is just the beginning for them. They've got a lot to look forward to.
No seniors in the starting lineup. And so, you hate to say this because there's just no guarantee that you're going to get, in that things are going to break the way, whatever. But it felt like this year was however far they get in the postseason is kind of gravy because of how. And I know that's a mistaken notion because, again, there's nothing that's guaranteed, but the valuable assets that are picked up and just learning of how to play and win in the postseason, to grind out a game like they did against Woodlawn for a regional title. Then, they go to Trico in the sectional, and this was the second semifinal. They play Goreville, and that was just we talked about it going in, about the potential of that game. and it was as good. I mean, Coach Tripp called it an instant classic, and it ended up Goreville winning 66-63. Sparta had a shot at a 3 in the final seconds to tie it.
Wouldn't want it any other way.
You couldn't have asked for anything more.
Yeah.
But again, the learning was there, and now the heartbreak of losing a close game like that, and so now. That they're going to put in, be hungry to put in the work to come back next year.
You would think. I mean, you're going to find out just how much work they put in, what that does. It goes one of two ways. Either the heartbreak destroys you or it leads to the way that most people expect it to, which is you improve, you use it as fuel. But these kids, they're all individuals and they're all different. For some, it might break them. Hopefully not, because Sparta's a great story. And like I said, it's just beginning. This entire season, but specifically Friday night, they just inspired a bunch of kids that in 10 years we're going to be talking about, because that this is the type of season that you get the community talking. Oh, we just won the most games we've ever won in a regular season. That's amazing. Oh, we just won our first regional title in 35 years. And you've got people that are bringing their kids to the games, excited about it, and those 7-8-year-olds are now looking up being like, I want to be a part of this.
Well, during warm-ups and during halftime, the parade of little guys that are down under the basket helping rebound in that's how the next generation goes, because they want to be like those guys.
That's right.
And, it takes so long to build something, but that's kind of when you get a good group that comes in, if you can capitalize on it, the young kids see it growing up and they want to be a part of that and they want to do that. The flip side is that, when it goes the other direction, sometimes it happens a lot quicker.
Happens overnight.
And it feels like it's overnight, and then all of a sudden now there's, if your program's struggling, those little kids don't even want to necessarily go to the game, much less be, I don't know if I want to be a part of that. And
right.
So, that would be the exciting thing for Sparta, is to see the impact that it's having on the younger kids. That they are going to want to be the ones that put on that Bulldog uniform, and that's how programs get built.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I mean, it can truly happen overnight. You can see sometimes a coach leaves, sometimes just everybody's like, oh, that didn't go the way we thought, and then all of a sudden kids are or their parents are finding jobs in other towns, and just all of a sudden that starting lineup you had last year, it's poofed, gone away, right. and then. Just it happens, but sometimes it's a slow build, sometimes to that collapse as well. But either way, it's much harder for it to happen this way. That's why it's taken 35 years to get another regional title for Sparta. It takes a long time to build it back up than it ever does for it to collapse. Even if it's a slow collapse, you see it coming, and you're just like, oh man, this isn't going to be fun, is it? But it's pretty fun when you've built Rome back up, and now you get to look around and say, what are we doing next?
In the first sectional semifinal at Trico on Tuesday night, Waltonville took care of Hardin County 64-43. So that sets up Waltonville-Goreville in the championship game at 7 o'clock. And I saw a message from Trico's athletics Facebook page that there were 182 tickets left. And that was,
I believe it.
That was 90 minutes into the ticket window, the digital ticket window being open. And so, I mean, look, the Waltonville and Goreville, we said all along, whatever combination ended up in that sectional final, it was going to be unbelievable.
Yep.
And so here we have Waltonville and Goreville, the 2-1 seeds of the subsectional. They met in the championship game at Cesar.
That's right.
And it was a game decided by 1 point on free throws with no time on the clock. So now they're going to play again for a sectional title and in the spot in the Elite Eight, in the Jacksonville Super Sectional. You can't ask for much better.
Well, and you want to talk about teams that have been building. Waltonville, man, they're what Sparta's looking at and saying, hey, in 2 years maybe we can be that. With all their young kids. But yeah, this is going to be just. I said barn burner for Friday night at Nashville. This is going to be a barn burner, man.
This will be a blaze.
Yeah,
blaze.
Yeah. I was talking with somebody that went to the game with his son last night, and he said they arrived at 6:05. Doors were supposed to open at 5:45. They estimate they might have opened a little bit earlier, but they got in, and they're like, I wonder if I'm going to be able to find a seat. And they're like, man, doors opened 20 minutes ago. We should be able to find a seat. They did not find a seat because it was just that packed that early. Waltonville and Goreville, don't be surprised if there's not too many people working from those towns on Friday. They might be camping out at Trico High School.
Yeah, because I saw somebody make the joke that tickets bought, we're going to go ahead and start camping for.
Might as well.
I mean, it's going to be like the Duke student section, camping out to get the spot. So
I mean, Trico might need to find a way to get a few more standing room only tickets somehow, some way. Across that bowl around,
yeah,
I don't know.
Just crazy with the two quality programs.
Yeah,
and Waltonville, similar in we talked about Sparta not having won a regional since '91.
Yeah,
Waltonville hadn't won a sectional game. They'd won regionals, but they hadn't won a sectional game, I believe, also since '91.
Wow!
And so they get that win, and so now they play for a sectional championship against Goreville, and again, those have been two of the cream in 1A, and the fact that they're the paths led them to this is not surprising, and I think it shapes up to be a tremendous game. And on the other side, it's the Nakoma sectional that feeds into Jacksonville, and that's going to be Jacksonville Route and Mount Sterling Brown County. And again, if it's Jacksonville, whoever comes out of Waltonville, Goreville, is going to be playing the home team in the super sectional. It may not be their home gym. I don't know who plays where and what, but again, it's in their town.
Yeah.
And if it's Goreville, the Goreville to Jacksonville is not an easy trip.
It's not.
Waltonville
isn't either, but
right. It's not ideal, but again, people are going to have to get off a half day of work.
Yeah, which I think a lot of people will understand. That's the great thing, especially around here, is this time of year, these 2-3 weeks, a lot of employers are pretty understanding, even if it's last notice. But man, it's whoever it ends up being coming out of Friday night, they probably won't have a great trip going to Jacksonville, but we'll be wishing them the best of luck. And I hope that we're talking. We'll probably have to do the podcast even earlier next week, hopefully, and hopefully be talking about somebody going to state, hopefully.
Right, and so and then of course we had Weber sent east, and the Trojans fell in the championship game of the Altamont Regional as they lost to the host 68-58. In that game last Friday night, Nathaniel Marlowe scored 41 points, so he ends up his career with 3,272 points. And that ends up number 2 on the IHSA's all-time boys scoring list. Chico's record survives another challenger, and so I believe 86 points we figured up.
86, 87.
He would have needed 87 to break it. And
the way he was going, though, you let him get to a sectional title, I bet he breaks it.
So,
that's the thing.
it would have been close. But then Altamont, and remember, this is a team that we saw at Sesser, and I had somebody send me a message this morning that said, hey, 3 of the final 16 in 1A were all at Sesser.
How about it?
And so for the holiday tournament, and Altamont was struggling.
They were. I remember that.
And it wasn't going well. And then they go home after Christmas, and they righted the ship. They beat Woodlawn at home, and then they really got going. And then they won their regional on their home floor. And then last night they beat Tuscola, or a couple nights ago they beat Tuscola. And so that gets them into the sectional final where they get Lawrenceville, who Lawrenceville survived an LIC foe, KZ Westfield. And again, going by the score, it was a tempo control game. Lawrenceville won that one 30-29. So you've got Altamont and Lawrenceville for the Macon Meridian sectional title. And again, the winner goes to the EIU super sectional. The other side is the Danville Schlarman sectional, which is a couple of number 1 seeds, Leroy and Decatur Unity Christian. And so, and again, the reason we kind of looked at that is if Weber could have made it, we could have had a couple locals in the semis. We could still have a couple 6-1-8 teams meeting in the semis because that's the Jacksonville Super plays the Eastern Super in that first game on Thursday. So we will definitely be keeping an eye on that as well. So, and then you get into 3A, and of course, the teams, we don't have a ton of them left. And again, I want to back up to Friday night.
Yes.
You talked about Centralia and Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon went slow tempo. I think it was 8-8 at halftime.
It was.
And Centralia ends up hanging on and taking care of business in the second half and wins it 33-22. And then, Marion ends up playing East St. Louis and
maybe their best game of the year.
Yeah, and it's a 5-point game with 3 minutes to go.
Yeah.
And I, as the score updates kept coming, it was like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hanging around, that's all you need to do.
And they had a possession with a couple shots down 5. And so then when you see what Eastside did last night to Jacksonville, 82-50, now either Marion got their attention or that really just honestly solidifies the effort that Marion put in last Friday night.
I choose to believe it's the latter. I do think Marion had some rough matchups, especially in the early going. They tested themselves, and that's what good teams do. They play the tough teams in the non-conference. They go and in a situation where you're a 3A school and you're looking around, you're like, there's not a lot of 3A schools that we aren't already playing in the area. They go far north to play really good 3A teams in both their turkey tournament and their Christmas tournament. I give them credit. They take beatings in those tournaments a lot. So that record does not necessarily show just how good Marion is. I got to see them when they went to Harrisburg. Again, that's not really a good indicator because Harrisburg was a 5-win team this year, and so they struggled. But I came away from that game being like, oh, Marion's pretty darn good. And, it's a shame that they ended up drawing East St. Louis and couldn't at least make a case for a sectional stay. But they're a pretty good club. They're losing some pretty good seniors in Adkins and Roper, but they're getting a majority of their good guys back, and they're just going to have to fill those two holes. But you're going to have House, you're going to have Blue. They've got a lot of good players coming back that I would say were the core. Roper and Adkins were kind of your glue guys that they could go out there, get you 12, 15 points if you really needed them to, but they weren't expected to. Your main guys are all coming back, and they've, like we talked about, they've got that sting now. Right. And what are they going to do with that heartbreak, especially when they poured so much in and took what a lot of people consider to be the top team in 3A, took them down to the wire, essentially, as much as you could against a team like the Flyers.
Well, and with Marion, I mean, Cam Curry and Makai House coming back, I can't think of a better duo. I mean,
really good.
It's not 2-on-2. This is not NBA Jam. So, no. But those two are high-level dudes, and so the future looks bright for Gus Gillespie and company.
And you mentioned those two, obviously, Curry and House. But as I mentioned, Blue also. Blake Blue, probably number 3 out of those 3, but
the ability to play off of those two.
Any other team in Southern Illinois would sit there and say, he can be our number 1 guy, without a doubt. And so that goes to show you that Marion next year has 3 number 1 guys. So look out for Marion, guys.
Now, in the first sectional semifinal at Waterloo, Centralia beat Triad 58-38, avenging last year's season-ending loss to the Knights. So Centralia into the sectional final against East St. Louis, and these were the top 2 in the same subsectional, but I think that most everybody kind of thought that's probably going to be the matchup on Friday night, and that's what we're going to get. Yeah,
that's what we definitely thought. But now Centralia, they took 1 loss this year to a really good Marist team in the Centralia. Who's still alive.
Yes.
But so you look at that and you say, okay, what'd you learn from it? Because East St. Louis is going to be one of those teams that's in 3A. It's not like football where it's like, well, they should be up there.
Right.
But they're going to have similar talent to a 4A team. And so what did you learn from it? Centralia is really good, but this is going to be probably their toughest test that they have faced since Marist. And so we're going to find out how much they've improved, what they learned, and if they can take them down. And I'm hoping they do, obviously. But I'm hoping they do. I hope Lee Bennett is playing on Monday night, and we're still talking about him hopefully next week.
Monday night is the Bank of Springfield Center Super Sectional gets the winner of the Muhammad Seymour Sectional, That's a pair of number ones. Decatur MacArthur, who I saw at the Collinsville tournament
so
against Mount Vernon. And, man, I just remember thinking at the time, good grief, this is a quality team. And if it's one of those that if you didn't have anything else going on Monday, I would go even at Centralia or East St. Louis. That would be a appointment viewing if you had that opportunity.
I've said it a few times, I think, on here. I know we've talked about it. Growing up in the Big 12, which Decatur MacArthur's a conference member of, man, they'd always be decent in football, but you knew come basketball season, both MacArthur and Eisenhower, man, you better look out for those two teams. They are basketball schools. Decatur is a basketball city. And MacArthur this year especially is just so darn good.
Yeah, they're really good. And they face Normal U-High, also
another really
number
good
number one seed that is a tradition of quality.
Yeah.
And so those winners will meet in Springfield on Monday. As far as the girls go, we talked about last week Nashville season coming to an end in the sectional final at the hands of Breeze Central. Central then beat T-Town to win the Benton Super Sectional. So Central is up at state in 2A. The girls get underway today as we speak, actually.
Best of luck to them.
And the only other immediate area team we had was Edwards County, the Black Diamond East champs. They lost to Mount Pulaski in the Arcola Super Sectional, which Edwards County to Arcola is an interesting trip on a school night, but it's not as bad as Quincy to Carbondale. but again, a great season for Edwards County, and that senior group of girls, so talented in multiple sports. And, they're so good in volleyball. They're also, obviously in basketball, getting to the super, and then, softball, they're pretty good too. And so, that's, there were some people talking about Grace Bishop of Edwards County. She's their all-time leading scorer, and it's not even really close.
No.
And then it's not her best sport. Softball's her best sport.
That's right. Yeah.
And so, it again, just a talented group of ladies, and had a great run, and they were the last 1A team, actually the last area team, Breeze Central, a little bit further away from us, and so they bowed out and one step short of state, and again, it was kind of a crazy game. They're up 7 in the third, and then it just kind of it snowballed on them, and next thing you know, they only scored. I think they only had 2 field goals from that point on.
That's rough.
And they ended up losing by 10, but still a great season for Edwards County.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say, obviously, talking about, that senior group, and I was going to say, well, we're not necessarily done talking about them, first of all, but second of all, you mentioned Bishop, but then you go to, I would say, their number 2 option, Nussmeier, and I don't know that basketball is her best sport either, because she's a pretty darn good volleyball player.
No doubt.
It's just like, man, you have just a collection of athletes there at Edwards County that have really left their mark there, and they go to a super sectional, and it's just kind of like we do this in our off time. Like, man.
Yeah, pretty good off-season workouts for the other sports. So.
Well, and when you're a 3-sport athlete, like a lot of those girls are, it's tough to devote your time to specifically one. A lot of college coaches, it doesn't matter what sport we're talking about, a lot of college coaches say, I want the ones that play multiple sports. But it's really tough to go ahead and work on your game in something. I'm thinking about Keegan Shields for Murfreesboro right now. I don't know what he's going to do in the spring. I assume he'll be probably in track because he is a pretty darn good track athlete. But when it comes down to football and basketball, especially now with football moving up, there's very limited time to get in the weight room, work on your skills as both a running back and for all intents and purposes, a power forward for Murfreesboro basketball. But he's expected for sophomore year to make a jump on both the football and basketball field, and I presume also as a track athlete when that time comes, But it's like when you're a multi-sport athlete and everything happens in the summer, you only have so much time, and the coaches want you to devote all your time to that, but they also understand. But it's like, but how good could you be? And that's where the whole thing with the AAUs and everything comes in, where it's like, yeah, it'd be great if you did focus on the one, but also you are limiting yourself. But you're also, if you do multiple sports, you're limiting yourself because you could be really good.
And that's probably a whole other podcast.
It absolutely is. I have a couple names in mind thinking about that.
Because you have that situation of, if you only concentrate on the one sport and you do it year round, the repetitive use injuries and things that come into play there. And so again, that's probably a whole other topic.
Here's the name that I'll throw out there that isn't actually at the top one on my mind talking about this, but it goes the opposite way of playing multiple sports. Nick Hill. He was going to go play college basketball, and he ended up being one of the greatest SIU quarterbacks of all time.
Right.
It's crazy how things work out.
Yeah, because I remember I was doing the recruiting, following him through the recruiting process behind the scenes, and I asked him, I said, how did you come down to decide to go basketball other than football? And he's like, there aren't 300-pound dudes chasing you in basketball. and then he still ends up going that way. So it ended up working out.
The funny thing is, I know he was 17 at the time when he said that. Right. I can still hear him say that though.
No doubt. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the River Radio Sports Central podcast. For Matty V, I'm Darren Kennard. We'll see you again next week. Not sure when it's going to drop. Depends on the state schedule. Depends on how that final week of the winter season shapes up. But we'll get it posted and get it to you. Take care.